Hello and welcome to episode 13 of the Clean Energy Show. I'm Brian Stockton.
And I'm James Whittingham. Brian, you always drink coffee just before the show. Do you want to tell us about what kind of coffee you're drinking?
Well, I'm drinking the Pike Place Starbucks that you get from the grocery store.
I never would have guessed that.
Oh, is that right? Why not?
I don't know. I just didn't pick you as a star. I thought you were like a, President's Choice blend person, half decaf.
It's true. Yeah, I did do that for a while. Yeah, I was a big fan of I don't know, the President's Choice stuff seems to have gone downhill a bit. But I think if you're buying coffee at a grocery store, I think the Starbucks stuff is a fairly safe choice.
Well, Brian, I listened to last week's show, and I thought that my energy level has been low on these podcasts.
What?
Yes, low. It's because I just get up, and you've been up for hours and hours. You get up with the birds
it's true.
For some reason. And I'm just up, and I'm not a morning person. So I just don't think I've kicked in. And when I'm explaining my stories, they go slowly and progress too slow.
Okay, what can we do about this?
Cocaine.
Okay, good.
I don't know what else to do than make an effort to be more energetic here on the Clean Energy Show with Brian Stockton and James Whittingham.
Okay, well, that sounded good.
Okay.
It's, I did a little broadcast training when I was in high school. Long story. Mm-hmm. But the thing that they taught me about broadcasting was the key to success in broadcasting is sincerity. And once you can fake that, you've got it made.
And it's true, isn't it?
It's totally true.
Well, we're not getting paid for this, so everything we do here is completely sincere.
Yeah, that's true.
And we've got lots to talk about this week. I'm gonna give you a bit of a preview of what's coming up on the show from my end, and that is we're going to talk about our YouTube videos, which suddenly caught fire.
Caught fire,
practically viral.
Practically,
from our standpoint. We used to get 1, 2, 3, maybe 4 views. Yeah, well, things have taken off with some things. And there was a bit of a backlash to our show last week, which was a backlash to the Backlash of the Planet of the Humans show. So we got some angry mail this week. I won't read it all, but I'll give a sense of it because people are very emotional on this issue, and somehow they've actually listened to our show. I looked at the stats. They listened to our whole rambling hour-long show last week, which is impressive.
That was the weird part to me, that people had complaints about, the Planet of the Humans thing, but we talked about ridiculous things for at least a half an hour before that.
I'm assuming they loved that and just forgot about that. So I want to talk about Elon Musk's sanity, which is concerning.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's an issue that's come up this week.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been an issue on my mind for a while, and we'll get to that a bit later. I also have some stats for our local power peak that I wasn't aware of. Our power peak in Saskatchewan is a bit different than other places. What did you want to talk about this week?
Well, I wanted to talk about first world problems.
Okay.
Of which I have several. And then just, a couple of various news stories. I don't know. Where do you want to start?
Well, let's go with you.
Oh, yeah? Okay. Yep. It's time for a new segment on the show called First World Problems.
Another new segment. Are you going to sing this one?
First World Problems.
That's good. That's good.
So that's the theme song.
We're still looking for people to come up with jingles for us or something.
Yeah. And if somebody ever comes up with a theme song for Brian's TV Corner, then I promise that we'll have that segment again. But not until then.
No new segments without songs. Okay, go ahead with First World Problems with Brian Stockton. Brian?
Okay, so I was driving around in my Tesla. I like to drive somewhere and go for a walk in the morning. This has been my pandemic routine. Mm-hmm. And this one isn't a problem so much as an interesting, fun thing. But so the Tesla has a traffic visualization on the screen at all times. It's recording all this data from all the cameras. And if there's a car beside you, it appears on the screen. And if that car is a truck, then it appears as a truck. And with each software update, these visualizations are getting better and better. And now there's stop signs and traffic lights. Anyway, I was driving down the street the other day, and we have a lot of Canada geese in our town. And they're often blocking the roads. And so there was a couple of Canada geese walking across the road in front of my car. And I got up nice and close to them just to see if they would show up on the visualization on the screen. And they didn't.
What?
No
Elon
geese.
Musk.
Yeah. Get on that. But I think someday it will actually work.
Well, that's too bad.
You do see, you see pedestrians and cyclists, and they appear on the screen as pedestrians and cyclists. So, and occasionally it'll get something wrong. Like I was next to a garbage can and it thought it was a traffic cone, like that kind of thing. So I think eventually, the geese will sort of appear as a dog first. And then when there's enough updates, it'll finally eventually appear as a goose.
Oh, okay.
That's what I'm thinking, is that, they'll figure out how to visualize animals at some point.
Do you really think they'll visualize a goose? They'll go to that length of trouble to put in rabbits and foxes and what else can you encounter?
Yeah, I mean, imagine what it's going to be like in 5 or 10 years, right? So yeah, for sure.
Okay, first world problems. Brian's complaining about
okay,
not having a goose visualized on his automatic driving system.
Okay, that one's not so much of a complaint, but anyway.
Were you honestly disappointed?
Yes, no, I didn't really think it was. I thought maybe something would show up on the screen, like they would appear as a traffic cone or something like that, but no.
Which is an object to avoid.
Yeah, just as an object to avoid, but no, there was nothing.
Tesla self-driving will run over a goose.
Exactly.
And that is not a happy situation.
Okay, the other first world problem is I ordered some driving gloves off of Amazon.
Of course.
I like to wear driving gloves when I drive. And
can you explain that, please? Because that's unusual.
It just feels better on the steering wheel. Like you just get a better grip of the steering wheel. And it's one of those things where once you try it, and then, you try it for a few times and then you go back to not having driving gloves, you'll notice a difference and you'll want to stick with the driving gloves.
Brian, I'm going to push back on this.
Oh, yeah?
Most people would say, why the hell do I want to wear gloves in my car in the summertime? How would I get used to that? I have moist hands.
Oh, well.
Well, everyone has moist. I mean, those of us with anxiety, particularly.
Mm-hmm.
I would not want moist hands in a glove driving. And how much yanking on that steering wheel are you doing? Are you doing the Indy 500? I mean, what are you doing here?
All I can tell you is that it feels better for me, and every time I forget the driving gloves, I'm disappointed.
Is this something your parents made you do so you wouldn't masturbate as a child? I mean, where does this come from?
No, it's like I got a pair at Army and Navy once, like 40 years ago. Like
driving gloves.
Yeah, like a $5 pair of leather driving gloves at Army and Navy.
This is something that Mr. Burns would wear.
Well, and the ones I got 30 years ago, they were the kind without fingers on the end, like they're cut off.
Well, that's nice. That's a luxury when you're wearing jerseys.
Yeah. But anyway, these ones are full fingered. But my problem is that they were advertised as working with touch screens. Because, sometimes when you wear gloves, you can't use a touch screen. And so they work on my watch as a touch screen. They work on the Tesla screen as a touch screen, but they do not work on my phone.
Well, that's good because you don't want to be using your phone when you're having driving gloves on and driving, right?
Well, I parked the car and I just wanted to check something on my phone. And it's like, I don't want to take my gloves off. And I ended up using my nose. Do you ever use your nose to operate your phone?
No, but I watched my daughter do it yesterday, literally for the first time. And I said, what are you doing?
Well, was she wearing gloves?
Yes, because we were cycling. Yes.
Right. Yeah. So sometimes you got to operate your phone with your nose. So that's I think a pretty serious first world problem.
Okay.
And I've got one more.
Okay. Jesus, this one truly deserves a theme song.
This segment's got legs. I mean, really, all of my problems are first world problems. So,
let's face it.
Headphones. So my favorite style of headphones are the kind that go behind your head. They're sometimes called neckband headphones. Mm-hmm. So where the connecting part between the two ears goes behind your head, like it goes on your neck,
right,
rather than on top of your head. So that's my favorite kind of headphones. And they've fallen so far out of fashion that I can't get them anymore. There's maybe some wired ones I can get, but I've gone wireless. I've been using Bluetooth headphones for many years now, and I walk a lot. I wear headphones a lot, and I can't get any that go behind the head anymore. The ones that are Bluetooth, And like I went for a bike ride this morning instead of a walk, and I had to go without a helmet because like if I had the kind that go behind your head, I could have worn a helmet and my headphones. But since I can't get that style of headphones, I had to bike without a helmet.
Is that safe to do that? I mean, you want to be able to listen to cars and Teslas approaching you as a cyclist, right?
Yeah, well, there's 3 different types of headphones, James.
I'm listening.
There's in-ear, there's on-ear,
go on,
and there's over-ear.
Okay.
So over-ear headphones are the ones you definitely don't want to be wearing outside because they block out the most sound, and some of them are even noise canceling. Remember there was a story a few years ago, a guy in BC, like a helicopter landed on his head or something because he was wearing headphones and didn't hear it.
Oh, like it literally crashed on him.
Yeah. It was a helicopter or something fell out of the sky. I mean, horrible.
And he was not okay, was he?
No, it was a horrible story. But
oh God, Jesus.
So I don't like over the ear headphones when I'm walking out in public. I would wear earbuds, which are sort of a mixture, like you can still hear outside sounds, but earbuds just fall out of my ears. Like I just don't have the right shape of ears for it.
Okay.
So the kind I prefer are called on-ear, which sit on your ear, but they don't cover them. So again, you still can hear some outside sounds. And often what I do when I'm walking is I'll take one ear off and just sort of put it beside my ear. So I'm really only listening with one of them.
Sure. But you don't have that stereophonic sound that
no, but it's usually
nature has given you to identify danger.
It's usually ridiculous podcasts like this one, which are only in mono anyway. So,
right.
What does it matter? But when I'm biking or walking, I do like to listen to something, and I can't get any behind the head wireless headphones, and it's
at all.
At all. Like I got some a few years ago, and they didn't last, and now. And you'd think with the internet, sure, there'd be 1,000 out there, but the answer is no, there isn't.
So how hard is it to buy driving gloves, and who's wearing them? Are they designed for your average person going to the store in their convertible or what?
I guess so. Well, these ones I bought off Amazon, and they have a measuring chart. Like you want to get them the correct size because you want them to be snug fitting. So yeah, I got them off Amazon, and they have a little chart where you sort of measure across your hand, and then you measure the length of your fingers to sort of figure out which size to get. I just got them off Amazon.
Okay. I think that that is the most first world problem I've ever heard. I mean, I've heard first world problems before.
I'm going to have
but driving gloves not being able to use on your phone.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's textbook right there. Is that it for your first world problems this week?
Yeah, that's plenty, but I'm sure I'll have more by next week.
Okay, so again, First World Problems is a new segment for the show, and if anyone wants to compose some music, preferably a jingle, that would be appropriate for the show. So, Brian, last week we talked about the Planet of the Humans, and we vowed not to talk about it because it's been proven completely inaccurate and completely bogus, right?
Mm-hmm, yeah.
Well, we got some comments on our show last week, which, by the way, gets like literally 3, 4, 2 views. 2 views is a common thing for
on the YouTube channel.
On the YouTube channel, because we're just putting out the audio with a still image, basically, and we're not popular yet. We will be one day, I'm sure. We've got 10 years to become popular here before we call it quits. So we actually had 5 comments, and they were all angry. And people actually put thought into it, and this is new for me, new for us, and also it had 174 views.
That's a lot.
That's approximately as much as 174 times much more than we usually get.
And like I said, the first half hour of the show is just us talking about nonsense. So
we punish them. We punish these trolls for, as we will again this week. But it was a hot topic, and our subscribership went up 700%.
Oh, great.
So not everybody hated us. And in fact, we had 2 thumbs up and only 1 thumb down.
Oh, well, that's pretty good.
So yeah, that's good.
Yeah, I
Plus,
mean, I don't really want to talk about it except to say that I think the debunkings are more credible than the film.
okay, yeah, no, I agree. And but I'm going to read you a comment because this is kind of the gist, and it's in all caps because the person is clearly angry. We clearly set him off. It says, you missed the whole point of the movie, and that is that monetization of the green movement by billionaires, giant corporations, and Wall Street. Their interests are profits, and they have proven over and over again they care nothing for the environment or what is the greater interest of all living things. And I say to that, Hollywood, I don't give a crap. It's built into this very show that you're listening to that the free market is going to contribute to the green revolution and the clean tech revolution, not governments. We're not going to do it through. It's not going to do its portion of saving the world by altruism. It's going to be through capitalism. And that's just the reality. And the fact is that green tech, and including cars soon, and buses and trucks, will be cheaper. So people will make more money, and those who do not go that way will go out of business because they won't be able to compete one-on-one.
Yeah, it's already cheaper than, say, coal, which has been shutting down, not because of regulation. I mean, partly because of regulations, but mostly because it's just not profitable anymore to burn coal.
And even China is letting the free market do most of the work. They had incentives for green cars. They've had incentives and stipulations for amount of green. But even in a communist authoritarian country, they're not forcing us to do it. And I don't think anybody really wants us to do that because it would be, it would be quite a hassle. They would be telling us not to get on an airplane. So I don't see any way forward unless, we all become extremely changed in our lifestyles and all governments in the world are doing the same thing. It's not going to work that way. It's going to have to be the free enterprise system. And this is something we've known for 20 years, that we've been watching for grid parity of solar for years, and it's finally come and surpassed that. And we all know, anyone who's following this, and this is what surprised me with the documentary, was that it's as if they knew nothing about this. That I would prefer that oil companies did not buy up all the wind and solar, and I don't think they will. I think they're buying some, and I think it's mostly just to look good. It's probably greenwashing, probably covering their bets a little bit. But I would prefer that it would be more democratized. That is to say that I have solar on my roof, you have solar on your roof. A small First Nations band in Saskatchewan can put up wind and solar and make money off of that. And a small company could do the same thing, or various big companies, but not just one big conglomerate of oil who are evil and will raise prices and do environmental damage. The whole idea is that more people will be doing it, more companies will be doing it to make money. Mm. That's my point.
Yeah, and there's certainly problems with green energy, and perhaps some of the points in the film are even valid about that, and this sort of corporate takeover. Yeah, there's probably a valid point in there. But the worst possible thing we can do is dig up oil out of the ground and burn it. And pretty much anything we do other than that is going to be better.
And that is very true. If you're burning anything and not capturing it, and I'm not sure about the economics of capture. I like the idea of capture, but the economics, apparently it's becoming cheaper to capture carbon, which brings me, Brian Stockton, to my next point. Mm-hmm. And that is there was an article about written in our local newspaper here about how things have changed in our own electrical grid in Saskatchewan, which is what, 2 million people? Mm-hmm. So it was 220 megawatts lower than the same period last year between March 15th and April 26th.
Because of the pandemic.
Because of the pandemic. So home use is up, industrial use is down. SaskPower spokesman said that the commercial and industrial usage is down while residential demand is up as far more people stay home. Now, this is interesting. This is the point why I wanted to bring it up, is we talk about peak power demand, and as it is in the States and in many other parts of the world, they have peak power pricing, and it's usually between 4 and 7 or 8 p.m. Is that correct?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Well, they said that in Saskatchewan, the normal peak load here is around 8 or 9 p.m. As not the span of the period, but the peak of the period.
Yeah.
Is around 8 or 9 p.m. in April, which surprised me because that's quite different than that's outside the window of what everyone else is doing. We don't have peak power pricing here yet. We will, because they tried smart meters, but they all started on fire, literally. So that set them back 5 years or more. But it's surprising that the peak now is coming between 5 and 6 p.m., which is within the window of normalcy. Do you have any explanation for this, Brian?
Of why the peak?
Why our peak was normally later than everybody else, between 8 and 9 p.m.?
No, I have no idea why that would be.
Because it's not like we're commuting. It's not like we live in big cities and it's taking us 2 hours to get home from the office. We're home within 20 minutes probably. And yeah, I can't understand why our peak usage is that far up.
Yeah, and it's true we don't have peak pricing. We pay about 15 cents a kilowatt hour, but it's 24 hours a day. It's always the same price. I don't know if the industrial customers. Yeah, I don't know. In fact, it's unfortunate about the smart meter thing because, like, you and I have solar panels, and they literally have to send somebody to my house every month to read the meter. Like this is the 1950s or something. Which is unfortunate. In fact, I caught it on my Tesla Sentry cam the other day. The guy reading the meter, showed up on my Tesla Sentry cam.
Which was your favorite angle?
I like the rear view. Yeah, you can switch between the different angles.
It's crazy because you have basically a security cam for your house.
Yeah.
For your neighbors' houses and for the houses across the street. Well, no, not across the street because it's not going to get set off. Like how close do you have to be before it can get set off?
If the car's parked in the driveway, people walking down the sidewalk will set it off.
Okay. Can you change that?
No.
Okay. So you get video of everybody who walks by your house?
Yeah, pretty much. Which isn't that often, but yeah. Okay. And I don't look at every one. Like it'll tell you there's 5 incidences and, sometimes I look, sometimes I don't. And I will eventually get bored and not bother looking at all unless the car has a big hole in it or something.
Yes. Well, it's very interesting though. I mean, even at a grocery store or wherever you are, the cottage, it's going to be a walking security system. And I think that's really cool.
Yeah, it's nice. Maybe we'll get some nice, nature footage of, squirrels running around or something like that.
If a bear walks up to your cottage and looks around, you'll know to be careful and
absolutely,
and have some great footage. Our friend Jay was living in BC. He now lives in Saskatchewan again, but he was living in BC, in rural BC, and he had a baby cub on his deck.
Yeah, I saw that video. Yeah.
Well, do you know what? He found a service online to sell it as news footage, and he's made hundreds of dollars off it. He's got like $200-$300 checks from it.
That's hilarious.
So I think you should go live in the mountains with your Tesla and just sell bear footage. Or anyone who's listening who lives near bears, you might want to sell your bear footage and not just let it go. It's crazy. No one was more surprised than him.
That's hilarious. Now I have another news story here, which sort of relates to all this, which like the price of all this stuff coming down. But there was another record low price set for solar power generation.
Right.
This comes from the Green Tech Media website, and this is in Abu Dhabi, and they're building a 2 gigawatt solar farm, and they put out tenders, and the winning bid came in at 1.35 cents per kilowatt hour. So that's the price they're going to be able to generate power at.
1.35 cents. We are paying retail here about 14, 15 cents.
Yeah.
And that's about average for North America, although there are some that are twice as much in California and places. And
we're slightly high, like BC is super low.
Is it? And yeah. Calgary is low. And yeah, although they have a larger connection fee to the grid, so it kind of works out.
Yeah. So, and then of course there's transmission costs on top of that. So that's not the end price that customers are going to pay, but it's viable financially viable to build solar at 1.35 US cents per kilowatt hour.
And there's nothing that competes with that, by the way. Natural gas does not compete with that.
Yeah.
It's probably the closest. And coal is much more than that. I think it's up around, I'm just guessing here. I thought I heard it was around 5 cents or something. And going up, like the cost of coal is not getting cheaper. They are sort of consolidating their workforce and using equipment more than people, but yeah.
And of course, you can't have your grid running 100% off solar. You would at least have to have batteries to store it at night, or usually it's a mix of wind and solar, and then possibly they still have coal burning somewhere to, level out the grid. But this is just even the beginning. It's probably going to go lower than that.
Yeah, and it will, because I understand the solar curve of cost declines is starting to level off, but it's still going down. I mean, it doesn't have much more room to go.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's still actually getting cheaper because they're finding more efficient. Well, for one thing, the panels are becoming slightly more efficient, and every slight improvement means that you're getting that fraction of a cent lower on your cost per kilowatt hour. So isn't it interesting, Brian, that this pandemic is sort of the relationship to the climate crisis in a way, because there's no pollution. We're sort of showing, there's been articles written now. CBC had one the other day about how, the air is clean and this is what electric transportation will look like if it's fed by a green grid, which is entirely possible, as we've been talking about, economically possible. So, yeah, we're having pollution free, we're having noise free, and it's also interesting though that the meat packing plants, the things that are, one of the contributions, all the contributions to the greenhouse gas problem is getting affected. Even meat production. Mm-hmm. The 1 in 5 Wendy's in the States doesn't have hamburgers, which I find amazing. And that's because that's probably going to, because they're out of meat because of the shutdowns. And there was a story this morning in CBC of the Cargill plant in Alberta that does a third of meat or beef in Canada. And they're all packed in there like sardines, the people. And boy, if you read the account of it, I spent a day at a kill plant once for a documentary, and I damn near became a vegetarian. And I went and forced a McDonald's cheeseburger down my throat because I don't like vegetables. It was life or death. I've become a little bit better acquainted with vegetables in the 30 years since that happened. But yeah, it's you see what happens to cows, and it's horrible. So yeah, these people are packed in there, and the lunchroom is literally like a packed subway train at rush hour. Mm-hmm. So my point is that I think we're going to see more COVID-related shutdowns of beef plants, mm-hmm. which means the beef sits around on the farm and doesn't get consumed, and people might actually, if this drags out for a year, might actually start considering alternatives more often, which are greener. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, there's air travel, which is practically shut down. It's like a fraction of what it used to be.
Yeah, there's no way I'm going on an airplane until there's a vaccine, that's for sure.
I would love to be able to travel and to go places around the world, but boy, when you really think about how it affects the environment, it's tough.
Yeah, and I did start thinking, in the last few years, I have thought about the carbon impact of flying, and I don't know, turns out I haven't flown anywhere for several years now, which is kind of unusual for me. Not necessarily a conscious decision, but yeah, I certainly don't, the carbon impact of flying is huge, and I don't take that lightly.
Well, what else do you have for us this week?
Well, getting back to cars, there was an interesting story I thought coming about Hyundai, that they've added a lithium-ion accessory battery to their current 2020 hybrid vehicles. So we've talked before about how even the Tesla has a crazy, stupid old lead acid battery in it, a 12-volt battery to run the accessories.
Right. That's basically, it turns on the computer and gets recharged over and over by the big battery, right?
Yeah, and it seems weird that such an advanced car with such a huge battery of its own would need a 12-volt lead acid battery, but they just decided that was the simplest and easiest thing to do, and this is how accessories normally run, so it was sort of like the path of least resistance.
I will point out, Brian, that this is one of the few maintenance things that you have to do on the Leaf is replace the battery every 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, same thing. There's a lead acid battery in the Leaf.
Right.
So, it turns out Hyundai are the first ones to actually get rid of it. So they've gone to a lithium ion as the 12-volt accessory battery. And it's sort of somehow worked in with the other battery. Like these are hybrid cars that have a battery. But they've worked it out so that if the battery is dead, you can press a button and fill it with energy from the bigger battery. But I think...
Doesn't it do that automatically?
It might do that automatically too. But I just thought it was interesting because, of course, we've acknowledged before, Tesla is very clearly in the lead. But I'm also a fan of Hyundai Kia, and they're not just sleeping. They're not just doing nothing. And their cars are fairly close in efficiency to the Teslas, which I think is something that people don't talk about very much. So, yeah, Tesla has a lead, but, as soon as these other companies start producing at volume, they're not as far behind, I think, sometimes as
Let me just
maybe.
ask you then about the battery. Is it take up the same footprint? Is it in the same place? Is that type of thing? It's the same thing, but it's lithium?
Well, it says it's in a partition adjacent to the main battery. So it's kind of like an area of the main battery that's partitioned off, something like that.
Okay. So you'll never have to replace it then.
Exactly. It'll last the same length as the lithium ion battery, which should last the life of the car.
And it'll be heated and cooled and everything else and taken care of. Well, that's very interesting. I didn't know about that.
And it says here, if you realize that the accessory battery is dead, you can simply press the 12-volt reset button, which gives a jumper cable-like boost to the smaller battery, which is almost certainly not dead as it's reserved for the powertrain. So, I'm interested in what Hyundai's doing, and they're actually.
I'm a little concerned though about that button having to push it. Like, why won't it just?
Why isn't it just automatic?
Itself?
Yeah, well, that's the where Tesla has the lead in the kind of software stuff that manages all this.
Mm-hmm. Well, Tesla is rumored to have some amazing battery tech about to be revealed by the end of the month, having to do with their new 1,000,000-mile battery cell that uses less cobalt. A lot of people are not liking the cobalt. It uses some cobalt. I read online people complaining, those kids in the mines are going to be out of work. And that's, and the jobs they go to are actually worse than the mining jobs.
Yeah, could be.
And there was a lot of people saying that. So I don't know. There's that going around. Anyway, poor Nigerian kids, I feel sorry for you, but Godspeed. Anyway.
And they've slowly been reduced. So yeah, for whatever reason, cobalt is the trickiest kind of thing to put in there. And everybody's been slowly reducing the amount of cobalt needed. And maybe eventually they'll be able to do without it. But now this is one of the issues. But again, better than digging up oil and burning it.
But it's also expensive, and that's an issue because we want to get the prices of those batteries down. So because of the pandemic, we haven't been able to see what this battery day is. It was supposed to have taken place by now, but it's the most anticipated thing of the year, and Elon has been hyping it lately. Which brings me to my next point. Mm-hmm. This morning, Elon announced the naming of his son.
Can you just pronounce that for us?
Sure, it's exactly 12.
Yeah, okay.
What the hell? XAE, what is that symbol? A-12. Is there? I didn't get a chance to read the article. Could you explain that to me? You've been up since 5? Come on.
Yeah, no, I can't. But yeah, they do have a reasoning. Grimes posted something on Instagram where she explained what each of the letters means. So each of them references something personal that means something to them, but no word yet on how it's pronounced.
Or how the child will feel about that in school.
Yeah, but didn't Moon Unit Zappa turn out okay?
I don't know.
I don't know either.
We should check into that. But even moon unit is more pronounceable than this.
Yeah, presumably they'll come up with, the kid will be named, Jimmy or something.
Yeah, maybe there's like a middle name of Andrew, and we'll just go by that, or Exy, or I don't know. I've been worried about. I think recently we've expected that the global auto sector would have caught up, because there was, for 5 years, announcements that all these electric cars were coming, and now that we're here, many of them are here, and they're disappointing. They're overpriced. They're not being pushed at dealerships. They're just not as good as a Tesla. They just don't have what Tesla has as far as, say, a charging infrastructure, which was a big factor in your decision. So Elon is still important, and I'm hoping that the day comes soon, very soon, that he's not important anymore, because I've been worried about him for a long time. Yeah, I know you're a fanboy, officially on the record, but I read an interview with him in, I forget what it was, Vogue or Rolling Stone a couple of years ago, and he was like hitting on the reporter. He was like lonely and said, do you know who I could maybe date? And it just seemed psychotic. It didn't seem like the guy who is going to save the world or be a major factor in it, as many of us Tesla fans feel.
He's a weird guy.
He could go off the rails, and he how do you feel about him hitting your stock, saying that the stock was overvalued on Twitter? Yeah,
well, Electrek actually had a great story about that. Electrek kind of figured out a little bit of what was going on. I mean, it also, I don't know, sounded like he was just maybe bored, and when he gets bored, he starts tweeting. But Electrek made a guess that, Elon, of course, was arguing for things to be opened back up again, because he wants his car plant to go back to work. He wants people to go back to work. The pandemic he feels is under control. We can start getting back to work. But people accused him of really saying that for monetary reasons, because he was close to hitting his pay target for Tesla. So if Tesla maintains a market value of $100 billion for a certain amount of time, I think it's 6 months, he gets a huge payday of around $700 million. That's how his compensation works. So people were speculating, he just wants everyone to get back to work so he can get his $700 million. And Electrek speculated that he intentionally tanked the stock so that people wouldn't think he was in this just for the money. And then he came out and apparently kind of admitted that was basically it. Now, it's turned out like the next day, the stock bounced back, and he ended up, he was right at the verge of hitting the target when he tanked it. But the stock bounced back the next day anyway. And so he's still getting his $700 million.
Okay. Well, I still have concerns, and just the fact that he's going against the scientific consensus on the pandemic and saying, it's these people are going to die anyway.
Yeah, it's not a good look. It's not ideal. And just because he has that vested interest, he should probably just step back based on those grounds, because it's impossible for him to be seen as even if he's right, it's impossible for him to be seen as any kind of impartial person. So he's not the person to be really talking about this.
There was a study that came out that the people we were talking about people at high risk, but on average, people had 10 years, this initial study, left in their life. Do you think he was arguing, well, they're going to die by December anyway? But no, I don't know where he got that from, but he's thinking of people in old folks' homes or at the end of their line. Well, there's a 100-year-old in Canada who overcame COVID, and God, I don't kill for her genes. I mean, literally, I would.
Yeah.
All right, Brian, I also wanted to talk about my laptop, which just popped up a screen and crashed my system here briefly, because it gave me an option, this is a Windows laptop, to only charge my battery to 60%.
Oh.
Or 80%. So have enough power, but to prolong the laptop battery life. People would say to me, my laptop battery only lasts 2 years or 3 years. How can an electric car work? Well, the answer to that, and it's always been confusing to them, is that the electric car manages the battery. Well, it's got better chemistry and heat control and stuff like that. But one of the reasons is because it manages the charge. It doesn't leave it sitting at 100%. When you use your battery plugged in, it's at 100%, and that's hard on the battery. And after 2 months of having this, it's popped up and said, hey, do you want to just charge it to 60% or 80%? And because it'll prolong your battery life. Mm-hmm. And the answer, my friend, is yes, I will, because I always do plug it in, and it's got plenty of power to, if I ever wanted to go longer, I can do that, I guess. And this brings me, Brian, to my next point, and that is that I'm having trouble figuring out how to charge my electric car during the pandemic because it's just sitting there. Right? I don't want to leave it sit at 80% necessarily. 80% is okay, but if you're leaving it for a month at 80%, it's not as ideal as leaving it at 50 or 60%. That's kind of the storage guidelines for electric cars for long periods of time. So I'm forcing my family to go use the electric car every now and again, and usually it sits unplugged so that it can be just there. And unfortunately, the security for my portable charger is that it plugs into the car and locks into the car so no one can steal it.
Right.
So I'm worried that someone's going to steal it. Anyway, that's my third world problem.
You mean first world problem?
First world problem. Living in a third world. As I do.
Well, it is uplands.
Yeah, it is uplands. So yeah, it's the murder capital of Regina. Possibly.
Yeah.
What else do you have this week, Brian, before we wrap things up?
Well, I wanted to talk about the oil refinery that you live near here in our beautiful city.
Okay.
As we've established before, you live very close to an oil refinery, which is technically it's a heavy oil upgrader.
Right. And if I can just interject something, 2 nights ago, I woke up to the worst smell I've ever smelled from the oil refinery in my bedroom because I sleep with the window open. Mm-hmm. And it was just, oh, fuck, this is going to kill me.
Oh, no.
Like, this is so bad that I should not be breathing what I'm breathing. And, of course, you're half asleep. I get up to pee, as I do, 60, 70 times a night. Mm-hmm. And, it was horrible. And that happens sometimes because the wind will shift, or there won't be any wind at all. It'll become very calm, and it just sort of comes out like a sinking mushroom cloud and spreads out in all directions. Mm-hmm. And the capacity is down 25%, and yet still it's the worst smell. And they're also on strike, so I don't know what's going on. Anyway, continue.
Yeah, well, it's just something occurred to me that it's a heavy oil upgrader, which means that it takes the poor quality oil that you get from places like the oil sands in Alberta. And I'm not sure where they get their oil from, but possibly from there. And then
some of it's from around here too. That's just not as good as, I don't know the full story of it, but yeah, it's not all oil sands. It would be just the less desirable oil. So I'm guessing your point is going to be that it's going to be under pressure because of prices. Yeah.
So this is just what I'm wondering is like, if the oil sands no longer become viable in the with the price of oil, certainly not now. I mean, it's going to rebound, but I don't know, maybe they'll, and there's a labor strike going on. And I was sort of wondering, well, maybe part of the reason behind the labor strike is that they know that the financial future of the refinery is in doubt. So they're trying to get the best possible deal with the workers because they know the writing's on the wall, perhaps. I don't know. That just occurred to me.
Yeah, no, it's been in the back of my mind, like, how much do they know? But it's been a horrible strike, and they will not budge. And
it's been a nasty
but they also
fight.
Make billions of dollars. They make like $1.2 billion last year. Who in Regina, and this butthole of a town and a butthole of a province in nowhere land, makes $1.2 billion? It was, they're making a lot of money. So it's hard to have sympathy for them. I know they have share. I don't know. They don't. And how does it work? Because it's a co-op. They don't have shareholders?
I've never quite understood that, but it's a co-op refinery.
They seem like a private company that's beholden to shareholders. I don't understand why they're so ruthless. Anyway.
But maybe the poor price of oil, if that continues, maybe they'll shut it down and your air will get cleaner around your house.
Oh, God, that's a dream come true. Yeah, it really is, because it doesn't always affect me, but when it does... Yeah, I choke and gag, and my throat's sore, and my eyes water, and I'm like at least 2 kilometers away from it, 3 kilometers away from most of it, and it's just gross.
All right, I just had one other thing. Is just about e-bikes for a second, because we usually talk about that. There's a company called Van Moof, a Dutch company that makes electric bikes. And they came out with a new model, the S3 and the X3. And they've broken a bit of a price barrier. Their previous bikes were around $3,000 US, and they've managed to get that down to $2,000 US for these new bikes. And they seem really great. And I was just kind of wondering, because, I've been complaining a lot about, bike shops and not being able to get what we want at a bike store and all this kind of thing. And I was sort of wondering if maybe the cycling industry is going through the same kind of disruption that the auto industry is going through. And like a company like Van Moof, they sort of aspire to be the Tesla of e-bikes. And I'm wondering if that's what it's going to take, is sort of an outside player to come in and remake it, because I'm not particularly happy with the offerings from the traditional bike makers, but it seems to be the same kind of a thing, is that, maybe an outside company. And they don't currently deal in Canada, so it would be very difficult for us to get one of these bikes. But they're sort of, they built a much bigger factory so that they could bring the price down. $2,000 US is still, very expensive for a bike, but it sounds like it's a high quality kind of thing. And it's like the disruption in e-bikes is continuing kind of in the same way as the auto industry.
Well, I'll use my bike as an example. It's okay. And I did switch the fork with my good bike. I have a $3,000 bike that I bought for $400 used. It was barely off a rich guy who had carpet in his garage, which I always remember. Not only did he have carpet, but he had carpet on top of the carpet. He had like an area mat. That's how rich he was. Yeah. And that's the person you want to buy a bike from, because you'll get the best deal. Yeah. So it's like a $3,000 bike that I would, of course, never buy. And it has good components and good forks. And it has an air fork, which I was contemplating buying for my e-bike for like $335 plus tax. But I did switch that 26-inch fork with my fork on my e-bike, which is 27 inches. So I got a slightly smaller wheel in the front now. But it is so much better. And I actually had to order a fork pump, because there's special pumps for forks that do high pressure and small volume.
Oh, okay.
And it's like $65, and that was the cheap one. Most of them were over $100. So.
And what do you do with that?
You put different air pressures into your fork depending on your weight, and depending on how much play you want, how much travel you want based on your weight. So what you're using it for.
Okay.
So if you're jumping into the air and landing, you want a nice soft, I don't know how that works. It might be stiffer, but yeah, you vary it slightly. But yeah, I have to have more air because I'm heavy, and I never did have a proper adjustment for that fork. It was just sort of goodish when I first got it, but I was lighter then, and now I'm heavier, so I want to put some more air in it. And it's fully capable of carrying my weight, but it just needs that adjustment. And it's just so much better than a spring fork that is just clunky and drags and acts as a pogo stick. This just nicely absorbs things, because I have been using it for mountain biking. Even though I'm not doing real mountain biking, I'm going on trails and up and down hills and trying to have some excitement in my life, because it's not nice warm weather for going on a nice leisurely trip around the neighborhood, unless you're Brian Stockton, as you did this morning.
Yep.
It must have been 7 degrees, but
it was nice.
It was quiet, I bet. I did that, and I also fell off my bike, by the way.
Oh, no.
I got into a rut that was from a car in mud, and there was a high side to it, and my pedal, they teach you in mountain biking class to keep your pedals level during that. Yep. And I didn't, and I hit it, and I had some notice that I knew I was eventually going down and I wouldn't be able to recover. So I planned it out of my head that I would roll with it, and it worked, and I'm not injured, really. Slightly injured. Yeah. But, if any sort of, stiff breeze injures me these days. So I thought, my daughter was horrified. She thought, oh, God, Dad's dead. And I wasn't. So it's always a good thing when you survive a bicycle accident on nice soft grass, because it had rained recently. So I have that. And one thing I just wanted to add about the e-bike experience too, and this is a bit off from what you're talking about, but I really enjoy it. I went for one day that it was warm and not, hurricane force winds here. I went for an hour-long drive around the neighborhood, and I thought, this is a perfect bike for tourism. because it was just so delightful to just casually glide around and look at things. And, if I wanted to catch up to my daughter, I just hit the throttle, and 2 seconds later I'm with her. And it was just a nice leisure experience, as well as most people use them for commuting. And by the way, we had some information on Twitter tweeted back to us that ridership of e-bikes maintains itself regardless of weather, whereas non-e-bikes, people travel less with bad weather.
Yeah, most people are fair weather cyclists unless it's an e-bike.
And that's true for me so far with my experience, is that I would never ride out in this weather until it was, 20-degree day or something decent. But I've been out there minus 25 wind chill trying the thing out. Anyway, my bike, I don't know. My bike was manufactured, it was designed in Germany and manufactured in China. And they did it smartly. They did a bike, like it wasn't cheap components, and it was the right components that you would expect for a bike store bike. It is a bit heavy, and there's no getting around that fork, because all bikes have that fork. Any bike under $1,200-$1,300 that's a normal bike will have that fork. And it's crappy because forks are expensive and people think they need forks, and usually they don't. If you're just riding as a commuter bike and going over potholes, just get a regular fork. It's 6 pounds lighter, and it's not going to give you any problems. But that's my story.
And I'm looking at our YouTube channel right now for Clean Energy Show, and you're up to 1.4, like 1,400 views on your bike review.
Just about 1,500.
That's amazing.
And furthermore, 27 thumbs up and 1 thumb down. So it is an incredibly successful video. I should make more of them.
Fantastic.
Lots of comments, and none of them nasty. So it's been a surprising response, because we haven't been able to get any traction on the YouTube, and suddenly there is an interest in that.
Yeah, no, it's a good way to get some listeners for the podcast.
Sure, and like I said, our subscribership is up 700%.
Fantastic.
However, that's gone from 1 to 7.
1 to 7. Yeah, I was just going to say one view. Yeah,
I'm not exaggerating it, but still 700% is a good stat, and I'll stick with that. Brian, I want to remind people that cleanenergyshow@gmail is our email address. We love to hear from you, even if it's hate-filled rants. I don't care. It's always good to know people are listening. Contribute. Speakpipe.com/cleanenergyshow is where you can leave us a little message on your computer, on your phone. Just record it, listen to it, and send it if you like it, and we'll play it on the show. And CLN Energy Show on Twitter is where most of our activity is happening, and we'd love to hear from you, like I said.
Yeah, and of course, like you said last week, our controversial episode, there's people commenting on the YouTube channel on last week's episode, complaining about how we got it all wrong. But the last thing in the world I want to do is argue with people on the internet. So
yes,
I'm not going to be doing that. But the great thing is, if you enjoy arguing with people on the internet, and some people do, I would encourage you to go into the comments on the YouTube channel and argue to your heart's content.
Use all caps if you must.
And I mean, it could be Russian bots for all we know.
I don't think it is, Brian. I thought about that. They're very specific.
Oh, yeah?
They're very specific. One guy down, said, I drove my Prius, and he said, well, that uses gas. And, it actually uses less energy, less greenhouse emissions than most electric cars.
Yeah.
But I still want an electric car because I love electric cars.
Yeah.
And they just work better and are better. And that's my primary interest in them, is because they're cool new tech. And, yeah.
Okay, well, I guess that's it, and we'll see everyone next week.
Thanks for listening.